Welcome back, everybody. This is John Malanca with the Association of Cannabinoid Specialists and another episode of Casual Conversations with my colleagues, Dr. Jordan Tishler, as well as Dr. Adam Abodeely. Here's one that still confuses me, even being in the industry as long as I've been in the industry, how to read a label. And there are so many different companies that are putting out product after product after product that have different styles of what's on the label. Back in 2008, when it was a 4-to-1 ratio, 2008 to 2012, I'd say, when it said a 4-to-1 ratio, that meant 4 parts THC, 1 part CBD. Where that changed, who knows? But now when you hear a 4-to-1 ratio, it's generally 4 parts CBD, 1 part THC. So always be sure to ask what that first number is, or you could get yourself in a little uncomfortable situation in many cases. So, but how to read label? Some labels have milligram, some have milliliter, some have dosing by the gram. So, what do you guys have to say about this?
Well, I can certainly I can start out. First and foremost, it comes down to what is the route of administration. First and foremost, when we look at a product, because there's the dose that we want and recommend patients have, and trying to understand how to consume that with an edible, which has well demarcated milligrams, is much easier sometimes than inhalational and tinctures and other forms. There's lots of things to talk about, with the label, but the first that we want to talk about was probably just, the cannabinoids, identifying which cannabinoids are in there at what percentage. There's isolates out there that are strict single cannabinoids, straight CBD or straight THC, but majority of the products have some other minor cannabinoids in them. They have some terpenes. So for going through the label and understanding what the product is important, particularly if trying to capture some of the potential benefits of some of these cannabinoids. The other thing that's on there is the terpenes. In addition to cannabinoids, a lot of companies will list their terpenes. And again, terpenes can and might play a role, but right now, what that role is as it relates to how it affects true patient outcomes is still a challenge, and is certainly a lot easier to predict based upon THC and CBD levels right now, rather than the arrangement of unique terpenes that might be in that strain. And similar to some of the challenges with oral administration, we also don't know how effective some of these terpenes are when they're administered orally, when they're inhaled. Because to be quite honest, we don't have any real studies which show that the terpenes at the levels that are in these cannabinoids right now are actually having a huge effect in isolation of themselves. It's really, if they do, it's going to come down to this recipe of having different terpenes mixed with different cannabinoids, but we're a ways off from understanding the science of these strains to that level. The other thing that we look for on there are the dates of when things were harvested, when they were packaged, and of course, when do they expire. And this may or may not be important for some people, but I would encourage people to certainly look and make sure that, particularly if you're using it for medicinal purposes, that some of these products may not be at the very end of their shelf life and expiration, because with flour and other things, we do know that over time some of the cannabinoids can degrade over time, and the shelf life can affect the cannabinoid concentrations, and may not accurately reflect the label if flour has been sitting there for 14, 16, 18 months. And which again may not be as relevant for the adult use side, but certainly could be relevant if you're trying to target a milligram specific dosing. So I'll kind of start with that. That's kind of some of the
Yeah,
main.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was picturing label, 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 but you brought a great point out of what, you know, when was it harvested? How long has it been on the shelf? And then, of course, the certificate analysis showing that um, what's inside of it has been tested for mold and pesticides and metals, and the list goes on. And so, for our listeners, if it does not have that information on, which I think most states now, it's a regulation to have that on there, um, pick another product, because there are a handful of great products out there that really follow rules and regulations and guidelines, et cetera, and wanting to make it easy for the patient to be able to see exactly what one dose is. I mean, I laugh because I remember back in the day it would say one dose, and it was enough to take down a whole NFL football team. And it's like, okay, we need to go back to the drawing board. And I brought this up in one of our casual conversations over the years, but a Department of Health doctor from the Department of Health called me from New Jersey, and he said, I've been put on this. I think he was the black sheep in the Department of Health, because he said they put me on this project to find out what California is doing incorrectly so we can probably improve it. And then a year or two later, he called me up. You remember me? I said, of course I remember you. He's like, I'm back on this project, and I want to see what Colorado has done incorrectly, that we can improve it here in our state, in the state of New Jersey. And so, what part of that was what's on a label, how to really truly write what's on a label, that it's easy to understand what, the doses, and what the ingredients are, if it is an edible or a tincture, et cetera. So the importance of label and reading a label is very important. Jordan, I know you work with a lot of patients as well, and different types of products. And this topic has come up quite a few times. Do you want to add to that?
At the Association of Cannabinoid Specialists, we are on a mission to train healthcare providers using research-backed science and to advocate for delivery systems that better serve patient care. Our children need us, and our parents do too. Help ACS bring care and relief to all who need it. Donate to ACS today. The first thing I would say is expect that you're going to need a magnifying lens.
Yeah.
Because, despite the fact that at least on the medical side, the largest growing population is senior citizens who aren't going to be able to read it, let alone get through the packaging. This is what all the states have come up with. I want to touch briefly on Adam's point about expiration dates.
Yeah.
The studies that I've seen suggest that cannabis, if treated properly, meaning not exposed to heat and light, will lose approximately 1% of its potency per year. In Massachusetts, what I learned was that at the time that the laws were created, somebody said, this should have an expiration date. And so everyone said, yes, what should it be? And they said, we don't know, so make it a year. And so that's what's on every package, is a year, but that's not based on any science. And so when I'm talking to my patients, I generally tell them, look, if it hasn't grown fur, meaning if it hasn't gotten moldy, then you can use it just fine. And obviously with gummies and other edibles, you also have to worry that it may dry out to the point of not being edible, but it's not going to be harmful.
Can I add something to that?
Sure.
When it gets old, it will convert to another cannabinoid, in most cases THC to CBN. Are you still a fan of that? Those studies?
I think that there's lots of data that suggests that yes, it will degrade oxidation over time towards CBN. That may or may not be a good thing depending upon what it is that we're trying to treat. Some people will benefit from CBN, we think. Other people, it may be make them fall asleep when they don't want to. So I think that there's some fudge.
Yeah. But if you're depending on what is on that label, and as Adam and both of you are stating, if it's closer to the 365-day mark versus day 100, and you're expecting for this dose to be that strength, it could, like you said, degrade. And what were you saying per year? How
1% per year. So
1%. Excuse me. Okay.
And I've actually had the occasion to take, shall we call it, elderly product to a lab to have it retested. And it tests out exactly the same as I
Gotcha.
So I don't worry about that too much. If it were 5 or 10 years, maybe, that might be an issue.
Yeah.
The other thing is the labels often are very confusing because, at least again on the edible side, there's going to be essentially a column that is for the package versus per the piece. And for my patients, I want them to focus on the amount per piece, meaning one gummy has 5 milligrams or whatever of THC in it. And I don't care that there are 100 milligrams in the package, right? Because it's in 20 pieces and each piece has 5 milligrams. So it gets confusing, even though it is in fact fairly simple to look at the right number if you know the right number. When it comes to dosing by inhalation, things get really wonky, right? Because cannabis flower is typically measured as a percentage. Well, we don't really care about the percentage per se. We want to know, again, how many milligrams of the cannabinoid ends up in the person, right? So you can actually figure that out. And this is something I teach my patients, that if they inhale through the vaporizer a full deep breath, so you use the capacity of the lungs to make sure we're getting the same amount of inspired gas each time, and you've put a 15 to 20% strain, THC strain into the vaporizer, that full lungs full works out to be roughly 5 milligrams of
Gotcha.
THC. Now, there's some fudge in that, but that gets us into the ballpark where we can start to say, okay, I took 2 puffs, now I need to convert to an edible for whatever reason, so I'm going to start at 10 milligrams on a gummy or something like that.
Well said. Well
When you
said.
get down to the tinctures, that's where things get really crazy because now you really have a liquid, right? We're measuring the dose as a liquid in milliliters, but what we really want to know is how much cannabis is in that milliliter, right? So that's percentage, that's expressed as a concentration. How many milligrams per milliliter? That's tough. And that's the kind of thing where I tell the patient, look, if we're going to do this, go get the tincture, send me a photograph of the back of the package so I can figure out, and then I'll tell you from that, I'll do the math and you can just take X milliliters and we'll know that it's the right dose. I do a lot of that with my patients is like, this is the product I would recommend, get this and take it like that, or go and get the product that's available to you and show me what you got so then I can go back and do the math to calculate how much you should be taking.
We've done it, and I've been on both sides. This is what we're administrating. Is it too much, too little? How do we read this? I mean, I remember when Corinne's father was going through this, there was no regulations. And we went, and the only reason we went, the first product we gave Corinne's father was a piece of chocolate because he had lung cancer. And it knocked him on his keister. And we're thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? What have we done? So we went back. I was happy that he tried it again. He was open, not,
Yeah, many people, that would be the end of the story right
yeah.
now.
And we ended up going back. And the only reason we went with what we did, we ended up getting a coconut oil capsule. We knew we could freeze it and cut our own slivers. And that was a calculation, a sliver. And we would journal. So I always share with everyone, journal. How did it make you feel? How did you make your patient feel? What did you eat, etc. But that's how we came to our dose for him. There was no label then. This is 2010. Freezing it, cutting it, sliver, and administering that way. And
Wow.
we had a great outcome, but I mean, night and day from when it was then to where it is today. So reading labels, asking questions is very important. That's what we do here at the Association of Cannabinoid Specialists with my 2 colleagues here, Dr. Jordan Tishler, as well as Dr. Adam Abodeely. And I think we're good. Please submit your questions. And these last two casual conversations, actually all our casual conversations are questions submitted by you, our followers. So keep them coming. We love them, and we'll answer them live on the air. So thank you, gentlemen. Always great to see you, and we'll see you at our next casual conversation.